So I'm Andy Hazzard. I'm going to talk a little bit about direct marketing, your small grains. Who here is growing organic grains currently? Pretty much everybody. Are some of you food grade producers? Who's food grade organic? Okay. Feed grade organic? And then some transitional people? Who wants to get into like the real, who's thinking about, I should say thinking about getting into food grade direct marketed value added? A couple people out there. I see Harold raising. I always tease Harold. I'm like, you're crazy. I don't know why you would do it. So I'm going to talk about marketing small grains. And some of what I say will be applicable to those people that maybe want to grow food grade and want to do some of their own cleaning before they do the sale to a broker or a wholesaler. There we go. So a little background, we'll do this real quick. I did vegetables. I have a degree in ag science, urban forestry, and native restoration, or with a focus on native restoration. And then I did landscaping and restoration for many years, and then I really wanted to farm, so I got into vegetables. There's a couple pictures of the farm. We did a lot of fall crops, a lot of experimentation with season extension, CSA, and then a lot of wholesale into the Chicagoland area, which set me up as I moved into the grains to tempt all of my current carrot, tomato, and garlic buyers with some polenta that I had made and cornmeal and all that kind of thing. And thus we began to make the transition, which was about 3 years of a year of research and development with the grain processing, and then 2 years of building it up while we kind of wound the vegetable operation down. I tried to do both at once. It was not pretty. So there is some of our fields. I believe that's triticale, which actually looked beautiful but didn't work out so well for us. Here we have some barley, oats, and wheat. That's some einkorn that I grew. It is really important to know yourself and know what you're good at. And the joke is, I don't need you to tell me what I don't know. So at any rate, as tempting as it is to jump into this, I strongly suggest a business plan and a feasibility study. And if you don't have one for your current operation, there is a nice project for you for winter. And then you can start going a little bit further. I learned every time I've started a new sort of thing in my business, I really sit down and think and do some research. And I learned so much. And I recently applied for a value-added producer grant and got one. And so that was the proper business plan of really having a sense of what is going on in the marketplace. So I think the biggest questions are, how much more money do you need to make? If it comes down to you really only need, $30,000 or $40,000 more per year, that's a big difference from somebody that wants to make $500,000 more per year. And so once you figure that out, you can start matching it up with what kind of land you have, what crops you're comfortable growing. The on-farm storage thing alone could be an answer for your problems. And then where you fall in the marketplace. Now, we are not certified organic. I don't own any land, and it's kind of an experimental thing that I'm doing, and so it just is something that hasn't happened. It is my goal in the future to maybe become certified, but as it stands now, I don't need it. I have a lot of transparency. I invite all my clients to my farm, and many of them take me up on it and visit. And we do tours and just a lot of education, which is something I would not have thought I would have needed to do a few years ago, but it definitely requires some sales. So some of your options for direct markets are, I sell my crops to other CSAs. They mark them up, and then they sell them to their members. And it's a nice fit because they're making a little bit of money in the winter, fall, spring, when there aren't a lot of vegetables. They're making their CSA more interesting for the people that are our members, and I'm able to move some products that I might be sitting on. It's a nice fit. Co-ops, restaurants, grocers. I have worked with wholesalers in the past. I'm not currently working with any, but it is something that I hope to do again in the future. The farm stand is great. If you already have an existing farm stand and are selling vegetables, the grains are a nice fit. And then online, and if you go to our website, you'll see what that looks like. What I've been learning a lot about is secondary markets. There's overs and unders. We clean and process fully everything on farm. So I am doing everything from my own seed production all the way to a 25-pound bag that's palletized and shipped. And there are a lot of byproducts in that line of production. And so figuring that out. Now I'm very small, so it doesn't matter too much. Like I'm not processing a semi-truckload of corn, but if I were processing them, by the time I got done, I would probably have several gravity wagons of feed product, essentially. So that's something to think about. And then, within the line, there's products that expire, and then all of the overs and unders and processing waste. The mill right now is probably producing anywhere from like 25, just the milling, this isn't really the cleaning so much, but 25 pounds a week of waste, which isn't a lot until you start multiplying that. And then you add what kind of waste comes off the gravity table, what kind of waste comes out of our clipper, all that kind of thing. So currently they're fed to pigs and chickens, which we will butcher and eat ourselves. So we are doing that. So if you're thinking about doing this, definitely line up your fans first. Start some small scale experiments and then start talking to people and giving them samples, and slow and deliberate. And ask them too, what do they want that you don't have? The reply that I often get is quinoa and amaranth. So that has been something that we're looking into. We grew some amaranth this year, and we grew some quinoa. The amaranth looks good. The quinoa is, I don't know. We'll see. The only reason this works for us is because I'm willing to drive into Chicago and, in some cases, sneak in the back door of restaurants because they won't take the call. They won't answer the email. So you just go guerrilla. So you have to be willing to do the sales, or find someone to work with, and think about partnerships and things like that. For us, the story of the farm has been a big thing, and the access to the farm that we're giving our clients. They feel really connected. They are connected. They can call me up. In fact, I have some of my chefs from Chicago are coming to camp on Monday and Tuesday. So that makes a big difference. Who can you collaborate with? Like, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Who around you is doing something similar that you could maybe partner up with? And then these are the two most important questions. How much risk are you willing to assume? For a lot of us, we're already kind of creative people. We already are innovating. We're pushing the boundaries. We're farming organically, doing something that a lot of people said couldn't be done. And so we are risk takers. But can you afford to take the risk? That's the question. So that becomes a measurement, as you decide to do this and then move into it. So a lot of you guys that came before me mentioned some of these, and these are just some of the milling operations and brokering places that I've come across in my research that I wouldn't say that we compete, but if I got bigger, maybe they would be somebody I would want to sell to because I'm very small, so on and so forth. I would say Anson Mills is probably doing something very similar to me, and King Arthur has definitely been pushing the boundaries. Bob's Red Mill has always sort of been there with what they're doing. So this is the sales part. Once you have your product packaged, you have to let people know you exist. So just a few shots of that, and then a farmer's market. My long-term goal is not to do retail pack, because I pack all those bags myself. And I'm not sure I want to be so big that I am having someone co-pack tens of thousands of pounds for me, and I'm arranging all the marketing and the shipping across the United States of all those products. I'm a farmer. I want to farm. So, but I think in the future there is a lot of opportunity for regional versions of Bob's Red Mill, essentially. So, and just to hit real quick on the growing, do you have good seed? Do you have a stable supply? I'm so specialized that I couldn't find the amounts of seed I needed on a yearly basis to replant. So I do all my own seed saving and selection. So I'm up to 5 kinds of corn now. We do a traditional yellow dent, Bloody Butcher, a blue corn that I'm not super happy with, and some Floriani Flint, which is an Italian heirloom. And I just added a white corn this year that's a 70-day that came as from a professor that had been working on it for some time, and I am impressed with it, and I really like it. So those are types of corn we have, and then I also do hard wheat. This is not every year. These crops go in and out of rotation. So like this year we didn't grow blue corn, and I didn't grow Flint because I'm getting so much stuff now. I got to flip back and forth. But soft wheat, hard wheat. I have a heirloom wheat that I'm working with. I do einkorn, spelt, farro, black beans, and that's it right now. And then I have a research nursery. It's maybe between 30 and 40 different varieties, things I'm looking into. But this is, if you're all farming already, you're all kind of doing this thing. I think the biggest thing with this diversified marketing for us at first was, how do we store all this? How do we get it all dry? We don't have 250 bushels of some things to run it through a batch dryer. So figuring all that kind of thing out. And as time has gone on, we've had more, not disease pressure in the fields. That seems to be getting less because we're saving our own seed. But pests in storage has been an issue, which I am really figuring out this year finally. So when you start looking at your cost of production, you're obviously going to have your regular cost of production from the time you plant that seed to the time you harvest it. And then once you move into value added, you need to figure in all the costs of all your equipment, so on and so forth. And it's odd because I actually have 2 entities. So one entity grows and harvests and process, and then the other entity sells and does the marketing. And it just made sense for the structure of our businesses, for the family and everything. But so essentially I am buying crop from myself and it can get a little interesting when you start doing that, but it does make it work well, and it makes you keep track of everything. So when it comes to pre-processing, like I said, I do all the pre-processing in-house. So I've never used a rotary screener much, but I'm getting more into using it because I need something to run my crop through really fast right when I bring it out of the field before it goes into the dryer. And then you've got your clipper style cleaners, and it can be anything from a little 2B up to, you know, what's that one? A 29D. 29D, yep. If you're dealing with hulled grains, that's going to be a whole nother project of figuring out the dehulling. The equipment is expensive, but you can usually figure different things out with those grains. And then you're definitely going to want a gravity table. With the amount of aflatoxin and the change in the weather with more moisture, small grains don't really like to be grown in Illinois. We have blessed with rich soil, but horrible for diseases in small grains. So the gravity table has been the key to get crops out the door because they have to pass that, all those aflatoxin tests and whatnot. So if you don't have it, find somebody else who does. I mean, maybe you can run your crop over to their place, have them run it through their cleaner, so on and so forth. Yes?
Have you figured out dehulling yet?
No. That's the short answer. We can dehull, but what happens is we get a lot of broken kernels. So that is problematic because people want those grains whole, almost like rice. But we'll someday, got to have something to work toward. Once you get to the milling process, what we did was we just took our milk house and we made that into our milling facility. So it is small. I have a small mill and a little sifter, which can handle quite a bit of product. But we did have to get inspected by the Department of Agriculture. And I was just talking recently with some grocers, and they wanted an up-to-date inspection because my inspection was 2013. So the woman that originally inspected me had retired, and now there was a new guy, and I thought, oh boy, this will be fun. I wonder if he's ever done a mill, you know, but he was lovely, and he also indicated to me that they are extremely understaffed. It would be months before he could come and re-inspect me, and that as far as they were concerned, I was good until a complaint was filed with the state against me. So if anybody wants to, do you guys want me to go in a little in depth about the processing room? Very simple. Wipeable walls, almost like a kitchen, you know, in a restaurant, but you don't need a grease trap. You don't need overhead stuff for stoves, all that kind of thing. But the basis of it is just seal up every crack, seal the floor with something sweepable, as much stainless steel as you can get in there in terms of like making things cleanable and wipeable. Our big thing we ran into was that they wanted us to have running water, hot, cold, in the room. And we're like, you don't want water anywhere near flour. Like, it is a nightmare. That is the worst thing that you could do. But we did it anyway. And do we use the sink? Not really, because water in a grinding room is not a good idea. So on and so forth. The processing part, rolling, grinding, sifting, these are just some guesses. We probably spent about $6,000. I wish we had spent $30,000 on our equipment. The labeling part is pretty easy. You can look at a label. If somebody wants a copy of one, I'll give you a copy of my label, which has been approved by the inspector. And it's very basic and straightforward. How are you going to package everything? We package by hand. I scoop every scoop of flour that goes in a bag is put there by me. So, and then just all the small details of like, how are you going to ship them, so on and so forth. And run things over a magnet because it is important. And from time to time, we have found small bits in the grain. I think the main one was when we had hired the neighbor kid to help clean some barley, and he allowed the clipper fan housing to backfill with grain, and it got so heavy that it pulled the housing off, and it popped out all the little old rusty nails into the grain. So we had to clean that little mess up. Luckily, it was for a seed crop. So on the marketing, how are you going to explain what is special about you? I can go down a list about what is special about my products, and I have a whole list of things that I've made that makes my company unique and different from Bob's Red Mill or from Anson Mills or from whoever. And knowing those and keeping those on the tip of your tongue when you're talking to people, because people will pay more for something that is unique and special. And at the end of the day, my cornmeal tastes better than the cornmeal that you buy at the grocery store because I just ground it yesterday. And my oats taste better because they are distinctly different than what they have. And so figuring those things out. I've done all of our own branding. I wish I had the time and money to pass that on to somebody else, and I might in the future. It's part of what I want to do with the grant money that I receive, but it just has not gotten done yet. And then publicity. You don't think you need it until you actually get some, and then you realize how nice it is that you're like, oh, I just saw a spike in sales because there was a write-up in a magazine about us, or so on and so forth. It might be worth it to hire someone to do some publicity for you, particularly when it comes to the Twitter and the Instagram and the Facebook. And these are things that I do use, but it is not what I want to spend my day doing at all. But there are people that love that kind of work. And you might have a niece or a nephew or a cousin or an aunt that likes that kind of thing that you could take advantage of them guiding you along and helping you a little bit about it or doing it for you. When you're thinking about wholesaling, they're going to mark it up at least 50%. So most people, but oftentimes more. I mean, people know what their costs are. And so, you know, if their operating margin is 55%, then that's what it is, and they have to mark it up. And a lot of times, those two numbers don't match because the markup is more than what the consumer is going to be willing to pay after it's passed through somebody's hands once or twice. Just depends on the situation. The fund, the inventory system, and similar to Dave, with your codes that you have for your crops, we have the same thing, just different. Ours are a little bit more simple. HP stands for home place, and that way we could work with other farmers. So like, let's say the crop was grown where I live, that's the Worthington farm, that's WF. Let's say John Jones grew it, it would be JJ. And then it would be the year the crop was grown, and then the date of final processing. Because we are processing things all along, you know, I might clean some corn and dry it, but it still needs to be cleaned twice more and run over the gravity table twice. So it's not final process. So for us, the date that the product gets is the date that I process it for final sale. And it would go in a 25-pound bag. That is the date that it gets. I still know what year it was. I might know, like, if we have multiple lots or something like that. But that was the date we decided to use. And you can set it up however you want. We don't have barcodes. We get asked for them a lot. Not a lot, but it keeps coming up. It's going to be something we have to do. And the thing I'm learning about barcodes is that it's going to be complicated. If you looked at every product we have, and we do a case and a master case, so that would be 2 separate barcodes on those cases for every product that we have, which is like 30-some products or more. So at the end of the day, it could be hundreds of barcodes, which isn't that kind of super fun stuff to do, which is probably why I'm not that interested in packaged goods. So case labels, and then all your promotional materials and things like that, which you just take from your marketing. You know, so sit down. What makes my farm special? What do I want to highlight? What are my favorite crops? Who am I selling to? And then you just start to pull all those things together and create your promotional materials. Try to keep colors simple across everything to try to keep it cohesive. Like if you bring in a graphic designer and a person to brand you, they're going to hand you back a very cohesive message with all these different materials. So you'll have a brochure, and you'll have business cards, and you'll have all different things they'll make, and then they'll even make your website all match up with that. But that's part of that final branding thing of making the brand cohesive across every front. So at any rate, a few more things you're going to want to do. Look into legal organization. Your insurance will go up when you start processing food. You need to trace a product, which is what we're talking about with those codes and numbers. You will have to go through food safety training if you're processing, because you're working in a food processing plant, and you will have to register with the federal government as such, which gives them access to your records and all that good stuff, which you may be used to if you're already certified organic anyway. You do need to have a recall plan and obviously liability insurance, and then all those, you know, internet marketing stuff. How are you going to do your ordering and your billing? You know, my dad and my brother, tickets are handwritten still at their farm when they sell something, and you know, for me, it's not that way. I'm printing invoices and making all that kind of stuff myself. And then how are you going to ship it? You know, all that kind of thing. Do you have a skid steer to load pallets and unload things, so on and so forth? Sales in 10 steps. So this is a real quick thing, and you'll get it in your email with all this kind of stuff, but I'm not super good at sales. I mean, I can walk in and talk to anybody, but I'm not good with the in-between spots and the final follow-through. And when I found this graphic, I thought this is something I need to use for my own business and to keep me on track with moving clients forward. Because sometimes, I mean, I've had clients that took me 1.5 years to finally land the sale. It just worked that way. They weren't ready, I wasn't ready, whatever it may be. So you're going to find that lead. You're going to, you know, make sure they're a good fit for you. Don't get yourself in over your head. Don't promise the moon. Meet them in person, connect with them via email. Ask what their concerns are. I had a client that was dragging their feet, and I said, you know what, I want to come up and talk to you. When's a good time? And I said, what's holding you back? This was before I actually went up there. And he said, well, we're concerned about prices. And I was like, great, I'll deal, you know, I'll address this and a couple other things when I come up for the meeting. There was some miscommunication at the beginning of the relationship. They thought they would have to pay like 25-pound price across the board, even if they were mixing and matching different products. They qualified for, in my program, they qualified for the best pricing I have no matter what they ordered because they were a bigger client. So when I explained that to them, the deal was already done, and then I was able to address a couple other issues they had. So by the end of the time, they were like, we're so excited. We're so glad to get this cleared up. And so be careful with all those little things because, you know, you just want things really clear for people. So do your demo, do your presentation, understand what their issues are. Sometimes you might find out things about their business that you never would have thought of and that isn't anything you can fix, but it does give you a sense of what kind of business person they are and what their long-term goals are and how those might affect you. So you're going to make your proposal, and then there may be a time here, there should be a 7.5, where you're going to readdress any issues they come back with. You close the deal and then start delivering, and then building that relationship, maintaining that relationship. Just like we go out and we don't just plant the corn and never step back in the field. There are a lot of steps in between that we do, and selling is the same way, and maintaining those relationships is the same way. Touching base with them, making sure they know you're thinking about them. Do you want to try a new, you know, we have a new product. Why don't I send you a sample? So on and so forth. You may find some of this CRM very confusing. I started using it, and then I decided I'm just going to go back to an Excel sheet. The stuff is too in-depth for what I'm doing. But as I've grown my business since then, now I'm looking at it again, just to help me manage my communications. There are different types of marketing. You know, face-to-face. That's pretty much what all of us do. We know the people that we're selling to, dealing with, so on and so forth. There's advertising, basic marketing, events, strategic, and social media. I do basic and event and social media. I don't really do strategic marketing, although it's something I should probably get more into. And I don't really do any advertising at all. When you are working on your marketing, this is a nice little thing to run through. It's pretty complicated, but I do think that it will get you some interesting, something to look at and work toward. Here are a couple things that I think that have kind of pulled out of all that other stuff. It's one thing when it's always you, but as your company grows, it's going to be your employees are an extension of you no matter where they go, no matter what they're doing, what they're saying. They are an extension of you. And so you do need to take the time if you're sending people out into the field representing you. When we were doing farmers markets, like 6 or 7 farmers markets, I was not doing any farmers markets. I was farming. So I had a crew of women that were going out and selling my wares for me, and I wanted them to have a certain standard. I wanted that booth to look a certain way. So we had to make organizational systems to handle all that kind of thing. And we did it, and it worked wonderfully. And overall, it was a wonderful situation. And I learned a ton, though, about keeping it simple for people and, well planned and sleek and keeping them in stock and making sure they don't run out of things. And it went well. So you do need to understand the marketplace, and just doing some research about some of these other companies I listed, who they're selling to, who do you want to sell to, how many restaurants in this area really are willing to pay for local grains that are fresh milled. It might seem like there are a lot, but there may not be. Or there may be even bigger opportunities than you thought. Universities are required to purchase a certain percentage of products locally, and food being one of them. Any place that receives federal money or state money in Illinois has to buy a certain amount of food locally. So you might stumble onto something even bigger than what you thought you had. Keep up on your trade publications. Most farmers I know have a table covered with magazines, so this is no different. You do need to be creative unless you have money and can pay somebody to be creative for you. But you still want that branding and anything that you do to have your stamp on it. It's got to look like when somebody meets you, they got to see you and your message and not feel like this doesn't add up. So that is something that is important. I've learned to be a product photographer, a food photographer. I've done photo editing, graphic design, writing, and event planning all around this business. And they are not things that I ever thought I would have to do to the extent that I now do them. So here's a great example. A couple years ago, I met a woman at an event I was speaking. Her name is Ellen. She's at Hune. Harold knows her as well. She's a huge fan of what we are doing. She has a bakery in Evanston. So she wanted to try out some heirloom wheat. We decided on a variety, and I planted it for her. I started out with 2.2 pounds. And we decided at that time, we're going to teach the consumer how much it takes to bring an heirloom grain back to the marketplace for them to have it in bread. So it's going to take 3 years. So we have this event, this strategic sort of event that we are doing things with over and over again in a different way every time we do it. So the first time we did it, her group came to the farm, all of her people in her bakery, and we hand harvested all of the grain. And then I replanted it this year, and we held an event at my farm with she and two other, a restaurant and a brewer. In the meantime, I took my malting barley, found a guy to malt it, and the brewer made beer out of the barley. The chef served purple barley and different types of cornmeal and polenta from my farm. They also used distiller's grain from the brewery at the restaurant and the bakery. And then Ellen baked bread with different grains from different farms. And we held this event on my farm, and it got us so much press that we actually made it into Forbes. We got a write-up in Forbes for this event because it hit on something that none of us thought it was going to hit on or really saw coming, the circular economy, where each of us is feeding things back into the other person's business, keeping all the money in the circle. And Forbes picked up on it. Who would have thought that could have happened? And when it did happen, I was just like, people started emailing me, and I was like, wow, who would have guessed? But Ellen's company hired a publicist to promote some of these projects we're doing. So you can see how things can just really balloon. Computer skills, the Facebook, the Instagram, all that kind of stuff. So you're supposed to be rating yourself as we go through all these. So if you got less than 15 points on those little checklists, you need some help. You know, if you're around 25, you're doing great. And if you're above 35, I would like to hire you to help me do it. But it is a nice, so you can start to gauge what your, as my partner Dan says, comfortability, which I don't think is a real word, but he makes up a lot of words, and we refer to them all as Danglish. So at any rate, now that we've gone through this direct marketing thing, this situation might look better to you, or it might not. That situation might look better. And I think no matter what side of the fence you are on, you kind of want to step to the other side of the fence. I would maybe prefer to be more here with some of my crops. And then you got Harold that is here, and he kind of wants to come and, you know, do the, so at any rate, this was interesting to me. This is all ways to do free marketing. And so just flip through this stuff when you get the email and find it and take a look at it. It is a lot of different ways to get free marketing. This was shocking to me. It's a minimum viable social media presence. And what surprised me a little bit was video, 500 a year minimum. We should all, if you're doing any direct marketing at all, you should be doing video production. And that's something that I want to learn to do on my own, basically. I want to be able to set up a camera on my farm and kind of pan around and then talk about what crops we're growing and whatever I want to talk about. Who knows? But this was kind of interesting to start to gauge, like, where are we at and where do we want to go? It kind of, when you realize how many different ways there are out there to communicate, it gets a little overwhelming. We do a website, Facebook. I do have some videos going up on YouTube and a really bad job of email marketing. That's what I do with that. The website I feel is good, and our Facebook is pretty interesting, more or less. I'm really excited about getting some video up, but the email marketing for me has just not been something, it's a really big weak spot that I want to address this winter. So packaging, where to start, you know, that's where we started. Little brown paper bags with windows, with me handwriting on everything, and it worked, and people bought stuff like crazy, and it didn't matter. But these did not ship well. They would fall apart, and so we had to come up with something else. But that was, we finally got like a proper tag, and then here's more where we're at right now. We just updated all of the labels with our new logo that we have, so they look a little bit different. And then there's what things look like when they go out for a wholesale bulk. The farmers market thing, there were markets that we made very, very good money at. There were markets that were absolutely horrible for us. Great for the guys selling tomatoes next to us, but not good for us. And it really came down to the neighborhood that supports the market, do they cook? Because what we were selling was raw milled product. If we had been making granola, oh my gosh, there would have been a line in front of our tent, but we weren't. And I thought about it, but I didn't feel like making granola. So it just was one of those things. And then it's good if you can try out a market, really feel people out, and you have to be willing to stand in front of your booth. And this was something I trained all my girls, because I had some that did it naturally and some that didn't, talking to people. Oh, look at that beautiful asparagus you got. What are you going to cook tonight? They'll tell you. Oh, I love my asparagus with cornbread. Oh, look, I have some right here. Would you like to buy it? So you have to have that ability to get out there and pull people toward you, because once there's one person standing out in front, there'll be 10. And as soon as a few people at the market become fans of yours, they will tell everyone. And that word of mouth marketing is priceless. So that said, but you know, markets cost money, and when it rains, the money does not pour in typically. So that's also something to keep in mind. all the girls had copies of all of our inspection reports with the state and otherwise, and I was just one of those things. They had a manila folder with everything that anyone from the county, the health department, the person that runs the market, somebody from the state could have come into or one of our booths and demanded to see some paperwork, and those girls had a copy of it because I didn't want to be messed with. And so that made that really easy. And then there's another picture of our booth that we had. The colored labels went crazy. We started out farmers markets with all white labels on all of our products, and it was just, we were just trying to figure it out. We knew people wanted it. We knew the locations we were at were good. And the minute we switched to the stupid colored label, sales like tripled. You would not even believe it. And then we had stock of white label. People didn't want those. And then, but our really good customers would be like, oh, I'll buy the white label ones to help you use them all up. You know, and so we did end up, I sent colored labels into Chicago for the girls to put over the white ones so that we could move the back stock. It was ridiculous. It's just so funny how people are, you know? You just learn a lot about people. So at any rate, the colored label went well. So know your weaknesses. Truly consider all your options and poke down those different roads that you have as you get into this, and then consider those collaborations and partnerships, just working together. So if you have any more questions, you can contact me, hazzardfreefarm@gmail.com. I also have a list of a bunch of different links on here. I think some of the stuff that you have in your printing, there might be in here as well. Lots of guides on direct marketing. Let's see. That's it. Any questions?
I got a question about the mill.
Yeah.
And so you've got roughly $6,000, you said, roughly in this mill.
Mm-hmm.
What's the utilization of it? I mean,
how much am I using it?
Yeah, I mean, out of 365 days, how many, I guess what I'm going to get at is, can you subcontract that mill out and make that a revenue stream? Or is there huge hurdles in doing that?
My mill's 8 inches, so it's not worth it. It's too small to subcontract out. What the plan is to upgrade to like a 12 or a 20 inch. A lot of what I sell is whole grain and rolled product, so I don't need the mill to process those things. But yeah, I could. And one thing I have found myself doing is people are growing their own corn, they're hand shelling it, and then they're bringing me 50 or 100 pounds of a product that they've grown and asking me to process it for them, to clean it and grind it and sift it down into whatever they want. And that was something that I had kind of foreseen, but suddenly there was a spike. And so it'll be interesting to see going forward if there's more of that. One thing I can offer is if you grew popcorn and you don't have cleaning equipment, but you want to take it to the farmer's market and sell it, you can bring it to me and I'll clean it for you. So that's kind of nice. And I think as we go on with this, it's going to be like, oh, you know, Harold's got a gravity table. Run it over there. They said they'd take people's grain certain times of the year when it's slow, that they can, you know, come in and use the table and it costs this much. I mean, that's essentially what we're going to do. The gravity table is nice, even as just a regional thing, because guy up the road grew wheat and he's got aflatoxin and he really wants to sell it, but it really needs to be cleaned. And that's something I can offer him. So, yeah. So I think that's good.
What's your liability issues?
Liability issues are probably the worst thing that can happen right now in our line is, and I always forget whether, we need a X-ray machine for metal because ferrous and non-ferrous metals are different and the magnet will only take out one of them. So that has been, we've never had that issue, but it could be an issue in the future. And I think that is basically about it. The bug issue and stuff like infestations and things like that, we have a pretty good, I've found some really good ways of controlling pests and just The biggest thing we had trouble with at the beginning was I'm so small that the batch dryers didn't fit. Like they were too big for me. And so getting it to where we can get crops out of the field and dried down. And then when you're messing around with this specialty corn, no one's done selection on it. It's an heirloom corn. They just grow it and sell the seed, grow it and sell the seed. So we're having corn coming in from the field at Thanksgiving with 28% moisture. That is a mess. Nobody wants that. That is just not good. So sorting those things out and then, you know, switching out different varieties, trying to figure out what works best.
You clean the machines out between different grains?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It takes me about, yeah, just to like the gravity table's takes the longest to clean out. And it takes me about an hour from start to finish to clean all of the augers. What you really need to do this is paddle augers. Regular spiral ones are horrible. It takes forever to get the grain out of them. There's always a little bit hiding somewhere. And because we do so many different crops, and because we're providing our own seed, that's even more so. We provide ourselves our own seed. So I don't want wheat in the spelt. I don't want oats in the barley. I don't, you know, it gets kind of, the corn is a little easier because we're hand picking every ear that's going back into the seed collection. So I have a lot of control over that. That has not been an issue other than with the planter and stuff like that. So yeah, a lot of clean out time. Other questions? All right. That's it.